Hey, welcome back to Dan's Chess Lounge, everyone. Today I'm going to be starting a new series on the one and only, the legendary Bobby Fischer. And I'm going to be taking a look at some of his greatest games. And the book that I'm going to be following is called Bobby Fischer Rediscovered by Andrew Soltis. And I'll put a link in the description and throw up a pic so you guys can see exactly which book it is. And this book here, it covers 100 of his games from childhood all the way up to the end. A lot of chess players know about Fischer's book, My 60 Memorable Games, but that only goes up to 1967. This book here by Andrew Soltis actually goes past that, and it covers more games, and it's 100 games in the book. So I'm going to be going over Fischer's games, and just because I have quite a few Fischer books, but like many other chess books, they sit on my shelf. I haven't had a chance to actually go through them, and I really want to go through this book here and just really enjoy Fischer's great skill and great play. So this game here is the very first game in the book. It was Fischer against Donald Byrne. Fischer was only 13 years old. It was played at the third annual Rosenwald tournament in New York in 1956. So the eventual winner of the tournament was another American prodigy, Samuel Reshevsky, but Fischer made all of the noise and made all of the talk across the world after this game here. So let's go ahead and dive into this game, see what transpired on the board. This game here has been called the game of the century. And let's go ahead and see what happened. Fischer was black, Byrne was white. Knight f3, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, d4. Now here, black can either play d5 here, striking out in the center as in a Gruenfeld, or he can castle and maybe play d6 and try to go into like a King's Indian defense. He can also play c5 at this point right here as well, and maybe go into like a Benoni. So black has many options at this point here. Fischer decided to castle, and he's allowing white to establish a very big center because he's planning on counterattacking the center with moves like d5, c5, and even e5 after he prepares it a little bit more. Bishop f4, and here we go. Strikes in the center with d5. We have a Gruenfeld variation, the three knights variation, the Hungarian attack. Queen b3, d takes c4, queen takes c4. Now you have the queen and the bishop both hitting the c7 square. So Fischer plays c6. That solves that problem. Now you have e4, taking a stronghold on the center. And I have to say that white does have a very impressive center, but black is not in any big trouble yet. He's not about to get pawn rolled just yet. He still has some resources available to him. Knight b d7, rook d1. Again, white here is preparing to storm roll black right in the center, and he just wants to smother black. Knight b6, this hits the queen, so the queen goes to c5. Now you have bishop g4. Now right here, black needs to make a strike in the center so he won't get rolled over, so he won't face this pawn roll here with his knights and his rook and his queen all supporting the push in the center. So now is the time that black needs to make a move, and he would like to play knight f to d7 and then strike in the center, counterattack with e5. And then that's going to be supported by the bishop as well. So both players know what black wants to do. How should white stop black from getting his plan off? Well, if he plays bishop e2, this would have been the best continuation right here. This is the best continuation. He's actually just going to allow black to go ahead and get his knight f to d7 in and his e5. Sometimes when you try to prevent your opponent from doing what's natural on their side, then you wind up creating more problems for your own self. You can wind up destroying your own position if you go out of your way to stop your opponent from getting their plan off. So sometimes you just need to let them do what they do what they're going to do, and you continue with your own solid development and plans. So this line here will continue knight f d7, attacks the queen. Queen goes to a3. Bishop takes. And a lot of times the light square bishop is traded off in these Gruenfelds because the light square bishop doesn't really have a great place to go to. So it's best if black can trade them off. Now if bishop captures back, then you will have your e5, striking the center. D takes e. The queen moves over. Now you have the knight and the queen hitting the pawn. So black is going to win the material back here. Bishop e2. Knight captures on e5, and the king castles. Now here, white is a little bit better, just a tiny slight bit better here, because he has the bishop pair, and he also has the e4 pawn in the center. So, but if you look at white's queen, it's misplaced. So due to that, white is just a tiny bit better. Now, if you go back, white didn't have to capture with the bishop. White could have captured here with the pawn here. G takes f instead. Now, this here is a more dynamic way of playing with that semi-open G file there. And e5 still comes. D takes e. Queen moves over to e8. Bishop goes back to e3. Queen captures. And now you have f4. And then once the queen moves, white is going to play e5. And this is a very dynamic way to play for white. And this gives white more of a chance. This is a more promising way for white to play this variation. So let's go back here. Donald Byrne did not play these moves though. Going back, looking at the position, after Fischer played bishop g4 here, Byrne played bishop g5, thinking that, okay, this is going to stop Fischer from playing knight f to d7, because then both the bishop and the queen would be hitting this e7 square. It's a very logical idea. Fischer plays this crazy move here. Absolute brilliant move. Plays knight a4. So what happens here if white takes the knight? Right? Because isn't the knight here just undefended? So if white takes the knight, knight takes a. Now you would have knight takes e4. That central pawn is no longer defended. Queen captures on e7. Now you have queen a5 check. It's a double attack. It also hits the knight here on a4. The knight goes back. And now you have rook f e8. And you have this big discovery here on this open e file. The queen is getting hit. So once the queen moves out the way, you're going to have the knight exposing the king with this discovery. This is just going to be a losing game for white. White does not have any moves here that doesn't lose the game. For example, if the queen goes to a3 at this point, then you would have Queen captures queen. Pawn captures queen. Knight captures knight. Bishop goes back because he was in check. Bishop blocks the check. Knight captures the rook on d1. King captures. Bishop captures knight. Pawn captures bishop. Bishop captures d4. And if the bishop decides to capture here, then you would just have the rook swinging over the d8, pinning the bishop and the king. So he would lose the bishop. So at the end of this variation here, white is lost. This would be a losing endgame for white here. And this was actually his best continuation. This was the best line for him to play. So let's go back. That's why he can't take on a4 there. So instead, Byrne saw that. So instead of taking on a4, he played queen a3. And I just have to note here that this game is so tactical. Fischer is making this game so tactical. I mean, a lot of players would have failed previously to the knight on a4. They would not have been able to see as deeply as Byrne saw there and saw that that was a losing continuation. So Byrne plays queen a3. Now knight takes knight. B takes knight. And now you have this very nice center here. The C, D, and E5 pawns is very nice. A very big center, taking up a lot of squares, controlling a lot of area and space. So you have knight captures E4. Black had to do that. Black had to play the knight captures E4 there when he thought about playing the knight to A4. It worked hand in hand. It went together. But now you have this pawn here on E7. It's undefended because you have the bishop and the queen both attacking it. So black wins that pawn on E4 there, but the pawn on E7 is in trouble. And indirectly after that, that means that the queen and bishop are going to be hit. So what does Fischer do here? Well, if he plays queen takes E7, then that would be a mistake. Because then you have queen captures queen, bishop captures, rook fe8, and again you have this dangerous discovery here on the king once the bishop moves out the way, and then the knight can do some real damage with this discovered check. So this would lose the game for white very quickly if he decided to take with the queen. So because of that, he takes with the bishop. And now you have queen b6. So now this rook here is under attack. And I just have to say that, again, the tactics from Fischer continues. This game is super tricky to play. This is one of those games where it was very, very easy to get miniatured in this game here if you did not spot all of these tactics. So what would happen here if Byrne took this rook on f8? If he did that, then you would have bishop captures bishop, attacking the queen. Queen goes to b3. Knight captures c3. Okay, is that a free knight? Can I capture the knight? What happens? If queen captures the knight on c3, now you have the bishop pinning the queen to the king there. So this would be a lost game for white here. So he couldn't do that. So instead, queen captures b6, a captures b6, and this is an easily won game for black here. You have the knight hitting the rook on d1, the knight hitting the pawn, The rook hitting the pawn on a2. This is an easy win. And black's also up material. He's up a pawn as well. So this is an easy game, easy end game for black to play. Let's go back. Okay, so we saw that he could not take the rook here on f8. So instead he played bishop c4. And Fischer took there on c3. Hits the rook on d1. So now what happens if, again, if white captures the knight there on c3. Queen captures knight. Now you have rook e8, which pins the bishop there. So queen e3. Now you have bishop f6. Double attack, bishop and the rook both on the bishop there. So black is going to win that bishop next. And white is still in big trouble here because he's got his queen and his king lined up here along this open file. So white is in some trouble here. And he's also down a pawn. So this is a much better position for black. So let's go back here. So instead, bishop c5 is played, and that's hitting the queen and the knight on c3 is under attack. So you have rook fe8, and here it's just amazing to see that white's king is still in the center of the board, and now it's being attacked. He spent a lot of tempo developing this big center that no longer exists. And he spent a lot of moves developing that center, and all he had to do was spend one tempo to castle, and then his king would have been nice and safe. So that just goes back to what happens when you violate chess fundamentals. Yeah, Byrne violated opening principles here, and now he's getting punished for it. So let's go ahead and see how the game continued. Again, Fischer's queen is under attack and his knight's also under attack. So how is he going to get out of that? What is he going to do? That's a double attack going on. How would you continue for black here? Bishop e6, double exclam. That is a brilliant move here. Hold on. What's going on here? Isn't Fischer's queen under attack? Isn't his knight under attack? And he just played bishop e6? Really? So what happens here? Let's dive in and tackle each of these and see what happens. Well, if he plays bishop e6 here, this just allows smothered mate to happen on the board. You would have queen b5 check, king g1, knight e2 check, king f1, knight g3 check, king g1, queen f1, rook captures, and now knight e2. Smothered mate. Beautiful. So he couldn't allow that. What happens if he plays queen captures knight? Then you have queen captures bishop on c5, pawn captures, bishop captures queen here. And this results in a winning endgame for black. So again, white cannot play this line here. So instead, he plays bishop captures queen. Yeah, he finally took the queen. Now, is he going to get punished for it? Is he able to take the queen? Let's see. Bishop captures bishop check. King goes to g1. Knight e2 check. King f1. Now you have knight d4 check. And Fischer could have kept doing this perpetual check here. He could have kept playing knight to e2, then back to d4, and kept doing it over and over again for the threefold repetition. And that would have been a perpetual check. But he kind of senses that he's got white on his heels, though. So he senses that it's more out there than the perpetual check. So he continues on. He plays knight e2 check, king f1, but now he goes to c3. check. King goes back to G1. And now you have A captures B. So Fischer says there's no draw here. Let's play on. I sense that there's more here. So now what happens here? The queen is under attack. If the queen goes to C1, now you have knight E2, check, forking the king and queen. That would win for black. If Byrne played to D6, then you would have rook A D8, queen captures. Now you have knight E2 check, this intermezzo. And now you have this nice interference here with knight going to D4, blocking the rook here and the queen from being connected. And so then white would just lose his queen there. So white can't do that. I told you this game is so tactical, so tricky. It would be tough to survive this game. For anyone to survive. So instead you had in the game here, after A takes B and the queen is hit, you had queen B4. This was the move that Byrne decided to play. Now you have rook A4, hits the queen again. Queen captures on B6, but then the knight captures the rook on D1. H3, this is like a flight move or an escape square here. Luft for the king here because he feels that the attack is coming. But is it just a tempo waster? Did he just give Fischer an extra tempo to attack? Rook captures A. The king runs to H2, trying to run for safety. Knight F2. This hits the rook there in the corner, so the rook goes to E1. Rook captures rook. Queen D8, check. The bishop goes to F8 to block the check. And now the knight captures the rook on E1. Bishop to D5 here. And at this point here, the game is completely lost for white. Black just has way too many pieces on the board for the queen. The queen just can't do everything by herself. The queen needs more help. It's just a matter of how is Fischer going to finish Byrne off. Knight F3, knight E4, queen B8. This attacks the pawn here on B7. So Fischer plays B5. He's definitely dotting all of his I's and crossing all of his T's. H4, H5. He's making sure that Byrne does not have any play at all. Knight E5, King G7, King G1, Bishop C5 check, and now you have a mate in 5. And there's a few different ways that Fischer could pull off this mate. Notice that the white king is trapped along this second rank here. So now you have knight G3, King E1, Bishop B4 check, King D1, Bishop B3 check, King C1, Knight E2 check, and now you have King B1, Knight C3 check, only one move, one square for the king to go, and now you have Rook C2 checkmate. And that was just an absolutely incredible game by Bobby Fischer. It was so tactical. I was so impressed by that game. It was very, very entertaining to go over. I can't believe that Bobby Fischer played that game at 13 years old. I mean, to have that type of tactical insight at 13 years old was just so impressive, very fascinating. And I'm looking forward to going over many more games in this book here. I can definitely see why this was called the game of the century. It definitely lived up to the name. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.